Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today I'm going to talk about something that I normally don't talk about because I don't take sides. I'm not ever going to take sides in mankind's political wars. But I've been hearing things or having messages posted on my videos that are just pure nonsense, and it blows my mind how ignorant people are. But I know that most of my subscribers are not ignorant, and they are listening for truth. They want some truth, and they're willing to hear it. They're not going to throw a fit if I tell them some truth. But every nation on earth right now has a different form of government. And yet they're all the same. It's basically every nation on earth has a very small group of human beings, rich, powerful human beings, telling the rest of them what to do. And from the very beginning, God was the ruler over humanity. But for some reason, mankind decided it would be better to separate themselves from God so that they could rule. They could be gods themselves, you know. And Eve was talking to Satan. He said, "Is it true that God's restricting you?" And Eve's like, "Well, yeah, but you know, he lets us eat food. He just doesn't let us eat the wrong food." And Satan said, "Well, that just sounds oppressive to me. Why don't you go ahead and eat that anyway?" And she says, "No, if we eat it, we'll die." That's what God says. He says, if we eat this stuff, we're going to die. So, anyway, Satan's reply to that was, "No, it's not true. You're not going to die, but if you eat it, you'll be like God. You know, you'll be able to make your own decisions, basically." And so Eve thought, "Well, you know, that does sound good. You know, I've been doing what God tells me. Maybe I should try to do something, you know, that He tells me not to do." And so from that point on, every government established by man is based on freedom. You know, we think that like it depends on where you live. If you live in Germany or China or North Korea or Venezuela, you've always got half the people there that are willing to kill or die for whoever's ruling based on the fact that they're free. They all think they're free, even though it's more than obvious. Well, here's the way it works. It's like in America, it's more than obvious to the vast majority of Americans that every other country on earth is oppressive. And it's more than obvious to every other country on the earth that America's oppressive. So people, for whatever reason, perceive themselves as free no matter how horrible their lives are, and they perceive everybody else as oppressed, even though if you were to visit those places, you would find out they're exactly like America. So anyways, for whatever reason, human beings simply are not able to process logic. I don't understand why that is, but every time I make a video where I talk about how oppressive human governments are, somebody will come on and tell me how wonderful I have it here in America, and that if I lived somewhere else, my life would be miserable. And as of late, I'm getting a lot of stuff about how true Christians have absolutely got to vote for Donald Trump in the upcoming election, because otherwise we're going to become a communist nation. And they'll talk about the opposing party, which in this case is called the Democrats, that they're socialists, they're communists, they're Nazis. And Donald Trump is the only thing that stands between freedom and that. So I'm just going to give you a brief history lesson, an accurate history lesson, so you can determine for yourself who the Nazis are. But prior to World War II, Germany's government had become nothing more than a cesspool. It was like everybody in the government was insanely wealthy. Laws were made based on how much money the politicians could make. The tax system was based on how much money the politicians could make. And people always think that if they get they put somebody in office, or they have somebody in office, that person's job is to make sure that the rest of us get rich. You know, that's not the way people work. If you ever are in a relationship with anybody, seems to me like your family members, your boss at work, the preacher at your church, basically every decision that everybody in the population is making is based on what will get me the most money and the most power. And so that's what pre-war Germany was like. Of course, they had the trigger event for that, or seemingly the turning point, was World War I. When World War I ended, everybody forced the German government to sign this armistice where they would pay war reparations and they wouldn't have a military, and it was just all kinds of rules that by which the government would collapse. There's no way that Germany, pre-war Germany, pre-World War II Germany, could have continued existing as a nation under these rules. And the proof is, you go back and look, they've got newsreels of people pushing wheelbarrows full of German money to go buy a loaf of bread, and that stuff is pretty much fiction. But at the same time, they did have their economy was in a serious bad state. It was failing miserably. I mean, eventually something would have had to give. And what gave was this guy that was unlike the establishment comes along, Adolf Hitler. And whereas everybody there was from one family, and all the politicians were from one family or one social group, they were all elitist. Each and every one of them very obviously was doing whatever the empire told them. Not the German Empire, but the Anglo-American world empire, America and England. They're sending all these trade goods to them for free. Everybody's working all the time with no hope of ever getting ahead. And when you've got this tipping point, every government has a tipping point before they collapse, and somehow it's more or less based on perception. When the vast majority of people in a country realize that they have no hope of ever achieving any of the dreams they have for their families, then suddenly there's some kind of thing happens, and that leads to the end. But what happened is this charismatic leader comes along, and he's going on and on about Germany and the fatherland and patriotism and the German way of life, and people wanted to hear that. A guy wrote a book called Mein Kampf, and if you're a reasonable, logical person and you read it, you're going to say, yeah, well, that sounds good, but it can't work, so let's just drop it. But these people knew that what they were living didn't work. And here was a guy offering them something else other than what they were living. And as far as they were concerned, it at least had a chance of working. All of the status quo politicians were just, same old, chicken in every pot, that kind of stuff that politicians do to get elected, hugging babies, that kind of stuff. And here comes this charismatic guy that was no better than any of them. He's just as stupid as a typical politician, but he's stupid in a different way. So now, what I hear, like every time I post a video about stay away from the empire, don't participate in their politics or their religion or their economics, just do what you gotta do to stay alive, keep a low profile, and just stand back and wait. Things are going to work themselves out because Christ is coming back. He really is. And it is going to be sooner than later. But there's always somebody that comes on there. As a Christian, it is our duty to vote for Donald Trump, because if you don't vote for Donald Trump, the world is going to become just like Nazi Germany. Okay, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like the Clintons, don't like any of these people. I don't like the Roosevelts, I don't like the Washingtons. They're all just insanely evil, selfish crooks all the way back. There ain't a single one of them that cared anything about the paupers, the low-class people that serve them. And so what I'm about to say is not to make one group look better than the other, because they aren't. The Democrats and Republicans are just two sides of the same coin. The left wing and right wing both belong to the same bird. But if you really have an open mind and are able to process logic, we are in the same state that Germany was in after Hitler got into power. Not like Donald Trump is going to set up concentration camps. I don't know if he is or isn't. I think that was coming, and that would come whether he took over or not. You know, this cycle that humanity is going through is a typical cycle that it normally goes through. You know, back in the day, but here's the thing. People will say this, you know, the Democrats want to bring about communist nation or socialist nation. I say that democracy is communism, is socialism, because basically every form of government is nothing more than an oligarchy. That's where a small group of elitists tell the rest of us what to do. And so that's what democracy is, that's what communism is, that's what the Nazis were. And there's, you know, if you're capable of understanding reality, then you just know that. These differences of the different forms of government are nothing more than a matter of perception. There's nothing real to associate with the teachings of what those different kinds of government are. They're all the same kind of government. But the reality is, for decades now, everybody's life is getting a little bit more miserable. We didn't have World War I. We didn't have a bunch of people make America sign some kind of agreement to send all of our resources to another country and to no longer have a military and all the stuff that was done to Germany. But every day, without any exception, people have less money coming in to buy increasingly expensive trade goods. Food, shelter, clothing, transportation costs is going astronomically up, while in general, nobody's income is going up. Now, there's always exception to the rule. There's always a group of people somewhere that they graduate high school, they get an entry-level job, they work their way up, they get increases in wages, they can go down and buy a new car every now and then, they get to pay off their house, get an RV, go visit the grandkids. But for the rest of us, which is like 90% or more, we struggle all day and all night to get enough money to buy food and shelter and a little bit of entertainment. So that's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And what comes along? Charismatic character. So we have Donald Trump. We've got 44 guys that rule the world from the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Each and every one of them is a crooked lawyer / politician. And even when they make a change, they just go from a bunch of white crooked lawyer / politicians to a black crooked lawyer politician. Suddenly we've got this crooked real estate developer / casino operator, as if, wow, finally some hope. And that's all it is. It's just some hope because things appear different. And I have not run into a single Trump supporter yet that did not bring up that Donald Trump is not a politician. He's a businessman. He's a successful businessman. He knows how to get things done. He's the only hope America has. The reality is, a crook is a crook. It doesn't matter if they're a crooked politician or a crooked priest or a crooked businessman. Crooks are crooks. The reason they're crooks is because they want to get rich and powerful. And what it takes to be a successful crooked politician is exactly the same thing that it takes to be a successful crooked businessman. This guy he's not Hitler. He's just the same as all of them. You know, the Chancellor of Germany or whatever, he was just another Hitler, but he was a Hitler that appeared to the people to be the same as the previous 100 Hitlers. So this new Hitler comes along, he looks different. Same thing with Donald Trump. We've got all of these crooks, crooked Donald Trumps. We've got George Washington Trump all the way up to Barack Trump. But somehow this Trump looks different because he has a different job title. If anything, if you want to compare American history to German history, we are currently experiencing the Nazi Party. Donald Trump isn't here to save us from the Nazi Party, and it didn't matter if Donald Trump got in or not. Whoever gets in there is going to take us to the same place. We're nearing the end of civilization, the collapse of the empire. Everybody who's rich is grabbing at straws, and even the poor are grabbing at straws, because even though they have no benefits from this system we live under, they've got the perception of benefits. They believe that they are gods and that they can determine what's right and wrong, free from God. You know, we're not free from Russia. We're not free from China. We're just free from God. And that itself is only a perception. Here you go. I'm going to continue making videos about staying clean, not touching the unclean thing, not being part of civilization. And when I say that, you know, the Bible says, you know, you're going to have to be part of civilization, but you don't have to be fully immersed in it. You know, I mean, we all have to learn how to eat food, how to sleep, how to drink water, how to have sex, how to have a job, how to get old and die. You know, those things, you can't escape that. So you can't completely separate yourself from civilization, but you don't have to tie up your future in. You don't have to associate your worth as a human being with your position in this system called civilization. I will continue to make videos about staying out of their nonsense, keeping a low profile, and awaiting the return of Christ. You know, and so there's nobody going to convince me that we have to get Donald Trump out of office or we have to keep Donald Trump in office, because those guys don't matter. They're just actors who happen to be on the stage during the collapse of Lord Satan's empire. Nothing that those people do will have any effect on you. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.